even though they only stick around for 1 or 2 episodes. Besides our favorites Lydia and Mason of course. I thought it would be interesting to talk about Emily's targets. Especially the ones in season 1 have quite good backstories, and I like how the writers found a way to connect all of them in this web together. If I knew not better I would assume they wrote the flashback episode first. But maybe this was some kind of the outline for the show. Cause some of the characters seemed inspired by the conspirators in the original story of Dumas. I will talk about Lydia Davis and Mason because they are recurring characters with tight ties to the Graysons. Tyler was one of my favorite targets of season 1 even though he has nothing to do with the conspiracy. But I just love the conflicts and side plot he set in motion. Most of the other targets from season 1 are just stereotypes like Wall Street crook Bill Harmon and the right-wing Senator Kingsley, who is a hypocrite because he is against abortion but wanted his mistress to abort their child. The only more interesting case job and story-wise was Michelle Banks. She came back too in season 3. Frank Stevens and Lee Moran were merely functional characters and just obstacles Emily had to overcome. And since they were also not that fleshed out I will leave them out, too. Gordon Murphy aka the white-haired man could have been an interesting adversary in season 2. Yet he was a great disappointment and killed off too fast to really left a mark. Though I really loved his little dance with Emily in the season 1 finale. And he was a real interesting character. But the backstory they gave him with Kara Clarke was just too cheesy. Season 2 lacked of good targets since we had this big bad lurking in the background. But it never did sting this threat of the initiative. So I will not talk about Helen Crawley or Trask. And do not let me start with Emily's foster mother and the Falcon. 2 characters who were such a cliches. The only real interesting case and one of my favorite targets was Judge Barnes and his wife Patricia. I have a soft spot for her, so I will talk about her backstory and the takedown of her husband. In season 3 we had a mix of good and bad targets. They started strong with Father Paul, for whom I have a soft spot, too. So he made it on the list. Busy Preston had a nice backstory with Nolan, but since she is not connected to the David Clarke conspiracy I will leave her out. Luke Gilliam was only a decoy, and though his backstory was fun and still is political controversial he will not be part of this list. Pascal on the other hand was a very important target and figure in both Conrad's and Victoria's life. And we have the connection to Aidan and his father. So he has to be on this list. Since his daughter already got a character study on her own, this is the full list. As I said, Malcolm Black was just a joke for me and no real villain, and about Louisa's family I talked enough in her character study. Victoria and Conrad will of course get their own character study. So let's dive right in with one of the early season 1 targets. Emily's and Victoria's psychiatrist Michelle Banks. It is interesting that she is one of the few women on Emily's list. Besides Lydia, who was her first target, and Victoria of course, all the other women are collaterals. Busy Preston, who was Nolan's target, and the Falcon, who was first not on Emily's radar. Sarah becomes a target by accident because she is associated to Daniel and a casualty in their War of Roses. But with Michelle Banks it is far more personal cause. She was not involved in the David Clarke trial, yet she was responsible for little Amanda's fate.
Please don't leave me in here. I promise I'll be a good girl.
You just be pretending. People who aren't who they claim to be, Amanda, are very, very dangerous. You would be wise to remember that.
So she is the only conspirator on Emily's list who hurt her, but not her father.
If you don't stop challenging me on this, you might wind up spending the rest of your childhood in this place. Is that what you want?
I want to see my daddy.
What is interesting about her character that she is actually the only one of the conspirators besides Father Paul who gets to say sorry to Emily.
I'm sorry. Sorry's not enough.
And she is also the only one besides Victoria who gets to know her real identity. Cause you cannot say that a psychiatrist and studied person does not get all the hints. First Emily's appearance in her office and confronting her about little Amanda. Then Victoria's screams. Who would not think the obvious here? Anyway, I like the conflicting character traits they gave her. Because she seems to actually care about her job when we see her in flashback. So she must have had conflicting feelings when she treated little Amanda. Of course, getting her own private practice, a bright future and money is an offer she could not resist. That is something she shares with all targets on Emily's list. They are greedy and trade morals and conscious for a better life and money in general. That is what made their punishment so comfortable to watch. And seeing how badly she treats Amanda in flashback and her relentless attempts to brainwash this little girl. Yeah, just break her was disturbing.
You know you will never see that man again. Tell me why. You know the truth.
He hurt people.
Go on.
He killed people. He lied.
Good girl.
Especially in contrast to her professional and caring therapy session with Emily.
It's time for you to stop playing the victim. Time for you to start taking an active role in your own happiness.
By the way, she is the only one who seems to see through Emily's facade. Cause her note capture unintentionally of course what Emily's problem is. She lives in the past.
The past continues to define her present, and she's given me no reason to believe that it won't define her future as well.
Like most of Emily's targets, we do not get to see her family or friends. Senator Kingsley and Judge Barnes are an exception story-wise. Cause their partners were vital for the story. And Pascal's daughter Margot was part of the cast even before Pascal was introduced. So the only relationship she has in the show is with her patients Emily and Victoria. Unlike Emily, who is not so reckless telling Michelle anything that could tip her off, Victoria seems to have the need to unburden her soul. At least in the season recording, Emily shows us she is talking about David. So I guess Michelle had gained her trust over the years. While Emily's revelations about not trusting men are partly true, but also so common that it would not arouse any suspicion.
It takes a lot for me to get physical with anybody.
Oh my God.
I just wish I knew for sure that I could trust him.
After seeing the flashback episode with all conspirators sitting together, I was wondering what they know about each other and the case. I mean, they all have a different level of knowledge and they are all part of the puzzle. For example, does Michelle know David was innocent? If so, it would have been even more despicable how she treated little Amanda. But if she really thought that man was evil and maybe even a danger to his daughter, she could have told herself that she was doing Amanda a favor by saving her from the bad influence of her criminal father. Or she just gave it no second thought, and stayed blissfully unaware of the truth behind David Clarke's story. After all, Amanda was just one of many children she had to evaluate during her career. Another interesting thing besides the Falcon and Amanda's foster mother, all women get a chance to redeem themselves. Michelle gets to help Emily in season 3 with Victoria.
You can't legally hold me here without the authority of another doctor.
Oh, but we have one. Yours.
Michelle.
Doctor, these are my notes from my sessions with Mrs. Grayson. They detail her obsession with Miss Thorne spiraling into acute psychosis.
Liar!
Ashley gets a new start back at home in Croydon.
Conrad's last act in office was to requisition your cell records that prove, in fact, that you attempted to lure Jack to his death.
Get on that plane, go back to Croydon, and we bury the information.
Nolan gives busy Preston the chance to repair her marriage and work for him.
Then I'll give you a choice. End the affair. Go back to the man that clearly loves you. Otherwise, I tell him the truth.
I am sorry about what happened with your father.
I've waited 10 years to hear that. It's just too bad he never will.
Sarah gets off the hook by giving up Daniel.
This isn't me. I got swept up in something and I want out.
Goodbye, Daniel.
In truth, which is doing her a favor as well. Cause Daniel has definitely a bad influence on her. And finally, even Victoria gets a second chance with David.
Are these the earrings I got you?
I love them. I kept them all these years, unaware that one day I'd get to wear them for you.
Not to forget Patricia Barnes, who breaks free from her husband.
Tonight you have the opportunity to save a whole lot more. Maybe even your own.
A man far wiser and braver than I once said, "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but let there never be a time when we fail to protest."
Patricia.
Robert.
And Lydia, who came back twice for her own revenge and got a second chance with Conrad.
And the wrong woman. I planned to remedy that when I fell in love with you years ago. I've always had a weakness for you because you're the only woman to see the guilt and the pain, the good and the bad. I'm not a simple man to be with, but I have a simple question. Do you love me?
Yes.
Then I want you to have the life I promised years ago. And maybe it's time we shake things up in the Hamptons.
So let's move on to our favorite mistress. Interesting that Emily starts her revengenda with Conrad's mistress. She hits the Graysons with her first move low down. And she kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Cause by destroying Lydia's marriage, she can buy the beach house back, which was not on the market as long Lydia and her husband lived there.
Actually, as of this email, I've just become the official new owner of the beach house.
That's great news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think Lydia's character works that good because Amber Valetta really revels in this soapy cliches. This tall blonde is a real strong personality who knows her worth.
Davis, Thanks for picking me up on the street corner like a prostitute.
What can I do about it?
You can write me a check. A big one.
Another empty threat?
Empty? How does this sound? The Graysons are incredibly powerful, Your Honor. I was intimidated into helping them frame David Clarke.
You're bluffing.
Try me.
She is a great match for Emily cause she is the first who assumes that Emily is behind everything bad that happened to her.
I'm here to get my life back. And no one, least of all a nosy troublemaker with a penchant for turning my world upside down, is gonna get in the way of that. We all have our South Fork in, Emily. I just made it my mission to find yours.
So Lydia is smart and vengeful like Emily. I admit since Emily was the only one to gain something here, namely the beach house. It was not that hard to assume she planned that.
And then yesterday at the South Fork Inn, I hope your husband's feeling better. Emily Thorne. Oh my God, is this your husband? Do you need a ride to the hospital?
But if you think about that Sylvester party photo, you must give her credits for persistency. Lydia is a woman who does not give up that easily.
And I can finally prove it. Here's the after. Clearly not you. Ready for the before? And there you are, Emily. Looks just like you, but with $1 billion fewer dollars.
Especially when Conrad is involved. In that flashback episode we get to know that Lydia had a crush on her boss long before the David Clarke trial even began.
When you asked me to back your testimony in David's trial, there's a reason I went along.
Yeah, there were a million reasons, if I remember correctly.
I never gave a damn about the money. I did it to protect you.
Why?
Isn't it obvious?
I do not necessarily share Natalie Waters' view on her because she obviously talks out of jealousy.
Lydia Davis was a vile whore.
Having that affair with Conrad does Lydia not make a whore? I think she really loves Conrad because all we know she had been faithful to him, and even though she tends to stir up trouble for him she always comes back. I like the notion they gave those two in season 3. Cause Conrad seems to have a soft spot for her, too. It is interesting that he really seems to love both women. Victoria and Lydia. In season 1 it looks like he is using Lydia as some kind of distraction because his marriage with Victoria is broken after her affair with David Clarke. But when she is coming back for Emily's wedding you can see how much he cares for his former lover.
Lydia, I am a titan of industry, master of the damned universe. I have the right family, the right connections, and the wrong woman by my side. I plan to remedy that when I fell in love with you years ago, a feeling that was recently reignited and promptly extinguished.
Since Revenge is as much a fashion show because we have that wealthy environment, I enjoyed Lydia's fashion choices. She always wears bold colors that underline the mood she is in. In season 1 she goes for blue, green and red. That blue dress in the flashback episode obviously underlined her loyalty for Conrad as his conspirator. Because she was the first to testify against David.
And against disgraced hedge fund executive David Clarke. Taking the stand was Clarke's secretary, Lydia Davis, whose testimony supported the damning allegations made by Clarke's former boss, Conrad Grayson.
David Clarke had everyone fooled, including me. I'm just glad I can help put that monster away.
Obviously one of the reasons why Emily started her revengenda with Lydia. The green dress when she stirs up trouble for Conrad cause she wants him to pay for her luxurious lifestyle shows her greedy and jealous character. Finally the red dress when Conrad makes his proposal shows her loving and caring side. She truly wants to have a future with Conrad and even breaks with her best friend Victoria for him. Most prominent is her golden dress in that episode when she nearly died. I loved that outfit because her hairstyle channeled that old glamorous Hollywood style, and her tall thin figure was really showing off in that gown. Though Victoria's silver grey dress was the best in that episode and Emily wore that beautiful thin golden mermaid-like dress, Lydia really looked like the queen of the evening. To underline her revengeful character she was wearing a lot of red in season 3. I like that Nolan refers to her as some kind of copy to Emily.
But she didn't go down without a fight. She still has it out for me.
What do you think she wants this time? What every pretty blonde who comes to the Hamptons wants. Revenge. Cause
she is really one of the targets who can match Emily's persistency and hunger for revenge. She might not be as skillful as Emily but surely is as smart as her. And with the real photo Lydia truly has the option to destroy Emily. I still love the dramatic red dress who looks like it has bloodstains. Obviously a commentary to Victoria being under suspicion for murdering Emily. It may be vulgar since Emily is in hospital still recovering from the fired shoots, but it certainly was a statement like ruining Victoria's stole. It was great that Amber Valetta always used the full potential of this character. She plays with the boundaries of soap opera but never goes over the top.
Don't just stand there. Zip me up.
I think a less good actor had played her more like a stereotype, but although her plot is always that full of cliches, Lydia is an interesting and full fleshed out character. which is one of the reasons why she was a fan favorite. As crazy as the idea is that she wants to have it all Conrad and maintain a friendship with his wife Victoria.
You lost your mind? What kind of stunt are you pulling showing up at my house?
I went to see Victoria. It had nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with me, huh?
I'm trying to repair the damage that my relationship with you caused our friendship.
A friendship that exists only in your imagination, I assure you.
She just needs more time. You might want to think about facilitating a detente for the two of us.
Detente between my mistress and my wife.
We can relate to that. Cause as Victoria's best friend she must know best that Victoria had stopped long ago to care for Conrad. So maybe this affair did not even occur to Lydia as betrayal. Unlike Conrad, who obviously wants not to see it. Lydia knows that their marriage was over when Victoria lost David. She is just staying with Conrad for the children and to maintain the Grayson lifestyle. So Lydia is not that delusional as Conrad paints her to be in season 1. In fact, she is as manipulative, driven and planful as Emily and Victoria. She fights for her relationship with both Graysons and plans her revenge on Emily. The only thing that contradicts this psychogram are her 2 attempts to take Conrad down. Obviously out of revenge for leaving and trying to kill her.
You didn't save me. You got rid of me.
If it's retribution you're seeking, perhaps you've forgotten who's to blame.
I'm well aware that Conrad owes me big.
Interesting that he has so much power over her that she stops every time when she is almost there. At the Open Arms Gala she had the chance to publicly destroy the Graysons. It may have not been enough to reopen the case. Cause at that point Emily had no proof for the Graysons' deeds. And since she was a former lover of Conrad, her statement would have not that much worth for any prosecutor. But it would have put a first shadow on the Graysons' white vest in public.
You were right. Lydia is behind everything. I just found her open arms speech on her computer. She's planning to expose you tonight. I'm staring at it right now. She writes, "Ladies and gentlemen, everyone here tonight is a victim of fraud and deceit so dark and despicable that it has taken me 15 terrible years to tell the truth about the monsters responsible. Victoria and Conrad Grayson."
And in season 3 when Margot reached out to her and she wrote all that notes down, it seems to me that she is the key to the conspiracy.
I'll need a list of people who can back you up and their connection to what happened.
She obviously knew all conspirators by name and many details. Maybe because she and Conrad talked about this while he was planning it. Victoria was, besides her testimony against David, surely not that much involved. First, because Conrad wanted to protect her, and second, she did not want to be more than necessary involved. So he went for Lydia to support her here. Maybe this was the moment when she proved her loyalty to him that he started to see her differently. And their affair started back then. Anyway, she seems to be conflicted when it comes to Conrad. Another reason to believe that she is in love with him.
And you look like no time has passed.
I'm not falling for this. We were engaged, Conrad. And you sent me to my death. I think you should go.
Why? Oh, I can see you're not done with me yet.
Cause she forgives him not only for his terrible deeds in the past. She truly seems not to care at all for David and all those innocent victims in the plane crash. No, Lydia also forgives him for that murder attempt. It is strange and remembers me of that Stockholm syndrome. When a hostage is attached to her abductor. Cause in some kind Lydia and Victoria are Conrad's hostages. They cannot break free and go to the authorities, cause they would ultimately suffer the consequences of their colluding with Conrad. So that immunity deal Victoria got expanded for Lydia maybe was her only chance to break free of Conrad and his bad influence. Just like Victoria destroys all her lovers, Conrad is really bad for Lydia. He brings out the most nasty character traits of her. Even more than Victoria, who is using Lydia as well. As some kind of support system, as we see in the pilot. Victoria is obviously turning to her best friend when she has problems with her husband. Which makes her betrayal obviously much more grievous. Lydia was one of my favorites because she went far beyond being that functional character who stirs up trouble for Emily and the Graysons. Yes, when she is around, Emily always has to initiate Plan B and turn on damage control. But Amber Valetta made us see a full kaleidoscope of reasons and motives for this character. So it is never in vain that Lydia pursues her own revenge. And of course she is just so naturally funny with all the poison she spills in Emily's and Victoria's direction.
I should have known better than to trust the Ice Queen. For starters, I want my house back. It helped being next door to Land Grayson. Leave the door unlocked. It'll make it easier for me to move back in.
Another fan favorite is Mason Treadwell. Unlike Lydia, he really got his comeback in every season. And he was the only character in season 2 who got a better storyline. For him, season 3 maybe was the worst. But let's start with his backstory because he is one of the most intriguing conspirators. Leo Mason Treadwell came late to the party.
Treadwell started out as a reporter covering the downing of Flight 197, only back then, he didn't go by Mason. His real name was
Leo Treadwell.
Cause he started out as journalist who was on David's side. I love that they gave this a twist.
Perhaps there is an arrangement that can be made after all.
Cause his righteousness would have become really dull very fast. But making it appear that everything about him is fake and a show really gave Mason some edge.
What a tool.
Exactly.
You don't say.
It's an incredible story. Really amazing book. Impeccably researched.
But what I really like is that notion that he is one of the conspirators who actually has a bad conscience. He is not all bad, and that makes him so intriguing.
And forced me to take a long look back, to sift through every word I had written, in search of any mistakes that demanded correction. Could it be true? Could I have been wrong about David Clarke? The answer, I'm afraid to say, was a resounding no.
And I love that he goes back and forth in his alliances. First he starts as some kind of truth defender who is interested in the conspiracy to tell a great story and make a name for himself, of course.
Do you have a response to David Clarke's allegations that you two were lovers? He says you wrote him a note on the eve of his conviction, promising to go to Prosecutor Kingsley with information that would exonerate him. So you're denying the existence of that note?
And that's the end of the interview.
But it's only just begun.
David Clarke's obviously using you, trying to sell his preposterous story in a desperate attempt to launch some sort of appeal.
But I'm going to write this story with or without your input.
By uncovering this great injustice, ribbed with money that all flies out of the window.
Why do you think all these people from your everyday life would turn on you so rapidly?
Just promises of power, money.
Fascinating footage. Clarke seems to be utterly convinced he's telling the truth.
In his twisted mind, he is. The general consensus within the psychiatric community is advanced pathological narcissism.
And no element of his story has been borne out by facts?
Not a shred.
So we learn very quick that not only his moral instincts but also his allegiance is for sale. Yet in season 1 he shows true remorse and he seems to have a soft spot for David Clarke's girls.
I'm here because your father says he's innocent. That he didn't do what they're saying.
They proved it in court.
Courts have been known to make mistakes. Do you think they made a mistake, Amanda?
I have to say he's guilty, but they'll put me away. Just like him.
I am not gonna let that happen.
I don't think he did it.
I don't either. How'd you like to help me rescue your father?
Although he seems to have no family of its own. Unless he is divorced, he truly cares for little Amanda in those flashbacks, and by the end of season 1 he is the only character besides her boyfriend Declan who cares for Charlotte.
So I stole a few pills. It's none of your business.
My darling, please take some advice from a man who knows a thing or two about selfishness and deceit. You don't have to go down this road. You don't have to be like the rest of your family.
I like that very much. 'Cause these grey shades they gave us in the first season made Emily's targets wholesome. And less a caricature of real people. Anyway, I believed him when he told Amanda that he would fight for her and her father. And he must have believed in David Clarke's innocence, which makes the betrayal worse.
But the book he published might as well have been written by the Graysons. All the same lies. It's worse. He made me believe them.
'Cause most of the conspirators might even not ask the question. Some might even just calm themselves down by telling themselves that David was a terrorist and they helped Conrad to put him away. Yet Mason is one of them who knows better from the start. And this seems some kind of torture for him. Which is enough for Emily in season 2 and 3 to get Mason on her side and try to make it right this time.
And which you failed to do for him.
If I could redress the balance.
In season 1 she failed cause Victoria had still too much power over Mason. And he was too afraid to do anything about it.
If you choose not to, I guarantee that those memoirs you're so proud of will end in a very dark chapter.
Yet when he starts to follow his own agenda in season 2, Mason is ready for Emily's manipulation. I love the plot twist they lend from the original story. That one of the late allies of our hero Dante's uncovers the true identity of the Count and therefore wants to help him. When they showed us how Mason uncovered Emily's and Fomander's connection, I thought it would be game over and he would go straight to the Graysons with his knowledge. But his instincts for a great story and the conscience he has left making him switch teams.
Amanda, I want you to know that I deeply regret the role I played in your father's demise. This next book will not only clear his name, but also portray you as a victim. Confession, they say, is good for the soul and for book sales.
And of course, by saving his life twice, Mason is in Emily's debt. So unlike all those other targets who get only one shot with Emily, I see a pattern here. 'Cause nearly all the former targets who came back or had a longer story arc had a bad conscience and change of heart. Michelle Banks became an one-time ally in Season 3. Patricia Barnes helped Emily to take down her husband. And her foster brother brought an unexpected target to her, their former foster mother who tortured them when they were young.
You act like you don't remember what that bitch did to us.
No parent will ever want you. I remember just fine.
And Hayward deserves to be punished. Like, I'm doing this with or without you.
Father Paul stands out of course because he is some kind of role model and ultimate example for this. Since his atonement starts long before Emily comes into his life.
They miss out on a whole lifetime of unconditional love. Lucky for you, I know where you can find a little extra. I started collecting food for the homeless on holidays when I first came to the parish. Now it's just grown exponentially. I'm hoping when I become pastor, I'll find a bigger place, feed more people. Overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Father.
Even Ashley and the white-haired man were conflicted and became part-time allies. Tyler Barrol and Pascal, two targets of whom we will talk later, became accidentally and unwillingly allies in Emily's war with the Graysons. Because they blackmailed them with information about the conspiracy for their own goals.
Am I? At least when I do business, people don't die. You want a scandal? You fire me and I tell the world that you and your wife were the real reason all those people died on Flight 197, and that guy who worked for you, David Clarke, was just a patsy.
Hey, sure, you want to go down that road? Because it goes back 20 years.
I have everything handled. There won't be any fallout. Just stay calm, and it'll all be fine.
You recall our chats from 1993?
You recorded our conversations.
About the bomb. David, every word.
Mason could have gone the same way as we saw in that flashback episode from Season 1.
I suppose you consider it your job to break this torrid story?
Less a job than a moral obligation. To quote Lippmann, there can be no higher law in journalism than to tell the truth and to shame the devil.
Shame the devil. You wrote that note.
I'm a writer, though this gruesome turn of events was certainly not the intention.
And I must admit it was the only time they showed us his real vile nature when he calculated a murder in.
Inspiration. I thought I'd beat the bushes to see if I could drum up some kind of fresh intrigue from my book.
You are despicable.
Gee, thanks. High praise coming from you.
Okay, as he sent that shame card, he may not have in mind or intended to let some of the conspirator get killed. But after David Clarke died in prison, he must have known how ruthless the Graysons and especially Conrad are. He must have known that they would do everything, including killing people, to guard the conspiracy a secret. Though the backstory why Mason was coming back in Season 2 and 3 got thinner and thinner, I like that his character follows the same pattern.
The years have been kind. Carol, where have you been?
Away.
Well, that's one of my favorite places.
First, it seems he will blow all of Emily's plans and uncover the truth behind her revengenda.
Just the woman I was looking for. A quick raid of my research confirmed that you had a terrible scar from a burn you had suffered in a foster care fire.
I had it removed.
Did you?
Hmm?
From what part of your body? You may be many things to many people, but the daughter of Kara Wallace and David Clarke, that is one thing that you most definitely are not.
Which would have had her killed, as we know latest, after Fomander got killed under Conrad's order.
We'll need assurances
that she has neither the intention nor the ability to ever come after me again.
Don't worry about it. She won't.
Funny, by the way, that he always spoke kind of that little girl and never plotted against Emily had her killed. While Victoria, who obviously hates Amanda more and more, is not involved in that crime. Anyway, just before it is too late, he comes back from the dark side and returns to Team Emily.
Which makes me a part of one of Miss Thorne's infamous plans in a story that she's obviously still very committed to finishing.
We need to know that we have your allegiance.
I only bartered with Victoria because, frankly, I'd lost faith. But consider me reborn.
So his last switch of alliances in Season 4 made his short appearance so intriguing. They really caught me off guard.
Tough break, as I have no intention of seeing you again. Ever. How does it feel to have the Louboutin on the other foot?
Victoria
had one final request before killing herself. She asked me to pass along a message to you.
That's right.
I reached out to the one person who'd been screwed harder than me. See you never, Amanda.
And since he is that obsessed with Amanda, like Victoria and Emily are with each other, he is the most fitting character for that little speech about Amanda. 'Cause if she likes it or not, Mason knows her best, and like any viewer from the outside can see right through her.
Everything but you. Realizing that while you hid behind your mission of revenge, Everyone else around you evolved. Like the little pyromaniac that you are, you started a fire and convinced yourself that you could contain it. But I know your dirty little secret. You can't exist without revenge. The endless cycle of hate is your addiction. And like all tales of compulsion, this will end the same way. First, you will crash, and then you will burn.
Not only because he comes one of Emily's allies, Mason has a close relationship to her. Not as close as Nolan, of course. But he can call her out quite well in that scene at the airfield. Though we have no information about his sexual orientation, I think he is intrigued by these two women and the war between Emily and Victoria. He is some kind of impersonation of both the writers and the audience. While Nolan often functions as mirror for the audience with his admiration for Emily's execution of her revengenda and her determination as well as her dangerously hatred.
I have to know, how did you do it? How'd you get your hands on a sex tape? Wow, that's commitment. You already got what you wanted. You destroyed a man's career.
I want to destroy his life.
Along with his family. You scare me.
Good.
You never cease to amaze and terrify me, Maestro.
Mason has a far less romantic view on Emily and her revenge mission. He also sees the betrayed little kid Nolan spoke of. But instead of feeling guilty and compassionate about her fate, Mason analyzes Emily's psychogram quite well and sees how wrong her path is here. So for me, he is in some ways smarter than all the other characters. More ruthless than Emily and Victoria together. 'Cause unlike the Graysons and Emily, he does not make the bad job himself. He manipulates people so long till they do exactly what he wants and they believe it is their own idea. Just like Emily works on Daniel. From behind, Mason is pulling Emily's and Victoria's strings in season 4.
Well done, Amanda.
The only thing I do not understand is why. I mean, he is out for revenge because Emily stole his story, I get that. Because this book he is obviously writing would have sold like no one before. But why is he not just writing a book that destroys Emily's perfect image like he threatened her?
Who knew that a side effect of happiness is naivete? I want the life I deserve, so I started writing another tome. I'm calling it One Big Lie, the Amanda Clarke story. It's sure to blow the lid off this good girl image you trick people into believing. You have 2 days to clear my name. I send the first 50 pages to publishers, newspapers, and Homeland Security.
I mean, at this point he must know that the war could only end in 3 ways. Victoria kills Emily, Emily kills Victoria, or both die. So after showing true remorse helping Emily and caring for little and grown-up Amanda, why is he putting her life at risk? Or is he instead counting on Emily's ability to take care of Victoria once and for all, and he is double-crossing Victoria here for the last time? I wish they had took the time to give us some answers here, and I am still wondering where Mason is right now. Would have been great to see Nolan and Emily trying to track him down in a 5th season. The fact that Tyler is one of the most intriguing targets from season 1 and he has absolutely no ties to the David Clarke story shows us all that is wrong with Emily's one-time targets. 'Cause they only work as that. Their backstories are elaborate enough to fill 1, maybe 2 episodes. But they are all too shallow for a deeper dive, with 1 or 2 exceptions of which I talked above. Yet Tyler was a mysterious and intriguing new addition. And it was surely no coincidence that his first departure falls in place with Fomander's arrival. They were both planned as some kind of roadblocks for Emily's revengenda. Since they became fan favorites and had potential, the writers made them come back. Which was the best decision. Because those two were one of the many reasons why Revenge was so intriguing in the first place. I must admit his evolution was kind of a surprise, cause his backstory is really dull and he has the most obvious plot device.
Tyler Barrol, Daniel's roommate at Harvard. You've got me all wrong. My father's company is bankrupt, and my family's been dealing with massive debt. I'm their only hope in rebuilding.
Just like he was designed to hate Emily and do everything to derail her.
Yeah, I bet you do, slut.
Upstairs. What's going on there?
Much like Fomander, but she has that complicated and intriguing past with Emily. So at first I was not impressed of Daniel's Harvard friend. 'Cause he was a total clichés and the first revelation about him being some kind of conman was not much promising either.
What's the dirt?
Suffice it to say, our boy is a bit of a con man. What he doesn't know is you can't con a con.
But his ambition and obsession with Emily made him more and more intriguing.
Your boyfriend's got a violent streak. You might want to be careful who you're dealing with.
I'm always careful, but I always know who I'm dealing with.
Especially as there was always something off with him. I must admit I love Ashton Holmes' intense play. On second watch I detected all those little details and hints he put into his play. That at first just makes us wonder what is wrong with this guy. And he was the first new character in the show who made us aware on the bad influence the Graysons and their environment have on people.
You really are a son of a bitch, aren't you?
Yes. It does appear that you despicable people are starting to rub off on me.
Emily is screwed up from the start because of her past. And the conspirators are already trapped in this web of lies and deceit. Yet Tyler starts as this harmless con artist who just tries to find a friend, maybe lover in Daniel, and wants to be kept up by some sugar daddy like Nolan. Under Conrad's influence, this turns fast into blackmail.
Quite an opportunity, sir.
It's come to my attention you garnered Mr. Ross's support through less than honorable circumstances. So your time here at Grayson Global is over. Blackmailing a potential client into a portfolio falls directly into the scandalous category.
At least when I do business, people don't die. You want a scandal? You fire me and I tell the world that you and your wife were the real reason all those people died on Flight 197, and that guy who worked for you, David Clarke, was just a patsy.
Until he is spiraling totally out of control when Tyler is off his meds. As I said in my episode talks, I do not necessarily like how they depict people with mental issues in Revenge. But Revenge is no exception. Nearly all TV shows use this clichés of a violent and unpredictable mental unstable person. I get the attraction here, cause mental illness can be an excuse for every wild behavior. And as a writer it is some kind of carte blanche to go to any extremes with this character. And for the mid-season finale it worked.
Does the name Frank Stevens mean anything to you? He worked for the Graysons. Emily bashed his skull in and then planted his wallet in my pocket for the cops to find.
His crazy plan for Daniel getting shot with Emily's gun and taking revenge on this power couple for rejecting him as a friend and lover was intriguing and thrilling.
Emily's gonna kill Daniel. Or at least that's how it will appear to the cops. An eye for an eye.
Cause till the end we feared not only for Daniel's safety but for Emily's guarded secret as well.
She's not worth it. Here, see for yourself.
What's this?
Why don't we call your fiancée and ask her? She's been playing you, brother. She's playing all of us.
Cause Tyler and Fomanda were the only ones who could spill Emily's biggest secret. And it was not unlikely one of them would have done so to take revenge.
Speak of the devil, or should I say the devil's daughter. Your father had excellent penmanship, by the way.
Another interesting spin on Tyler was his sexual orientation. Making him gay was a nice twist. He only seems to use Ashley and her insight on the Graysons like he is using Nolan for his money.
Thank you for the use of your card. A man's clothes speak volumes.
So do his actions, which in my estimation makes you a common thief.
On the other hand, it seems as if he is truly in love with Daniel. Yet his obsessive and narcissistic character does not allow him to care that much for him.
What are you still doing here?
Waiting for you, Danny. Always waiting for you. I thought maybe you could come with me. Come on. We're best buds, remember?
We're nothing, Tyler. We're done.
Danny. I know you don't mean that.
I do. You threatening me?
I don't know. Do I need to? I'd watch my mouth if I were you. As pretty as it is, it could get you into more trouble than you could handle.
And on second watch I like his function here as some kind of mirror for Emily. Cause she is using Daniel and more than a little obsessed with the Graysons just like Tyler. But while Tyler always cares more about himself and his needs, I mean he even uses Daniel's drinking problem.
Let me ask you something. When's the last time you woke up craving a drink?
Never.
That's because despite what Mommy and Daddy say, you're not an alcoholic.
And do not tell me that he cannot see Daniel has major issues with alcohol. If he did not see that when they were partying at college, he definitely saw it when they partied in Jack's bar. A blind can see that Daniel has some serious drinking issues.
And that is all the time I have for questions tonight. Good night, sports fans.
Seems to me the best plan for him has a minimum of 12 steps. Not my fault. Daniel's new sidekick was at the helm. Guy was feeding him shots like a frat boy to a freshman.
Emily's feelings for Daniel grow more and more. And she even thinks about letting him go for his own good. I do not know what Tyler's endgame was before he planned his revenge on Emily. I believe he just wanted to get rid of her and the next step would have been to confess his feelings to Daniel. Which is clearly the wrong target for his affection because he never showed us anything but a straight orientation. Though his relationship with Nolan was short-lived, I always felt bad for Nolan that he lost a chance for a little bit of happiness here.
We could have been a good team. Now you're just as lonely and pathetic as the day I found you.
Yes, they were doomed from the start cause Tyler's violent and obsessive character just leaves no space for a real relationship. But if he was not that ill, they could have been a great team. I mean, with his skills, ruthlessness and smart mind, Tyler could have been a real asset for Emily's revengenda. When he blackmailed Conrad, the first really thought for a moment he could become Emily's ally. Yes, I enjoyed this love triangle with Emily and Daniel that only existed in Tyler's mind. But would have been cool if he had dropped this and switched to Team Emily. I love how Ashton walks a fine line here, especially in his scenes with Emily and Daniel. His jealousy and obsession with Emily are fun to watch. Especially because Emily shows the same tendencies when it comes to Victoria. Of course, that is the reason why Emily hates Tyler that much from the get-go.
So why did they ask you to take them around the islands?
His parents own one.
Oh, so you've been.
Me? No. Yeah, I think there was a hurricane.
Doesn't hurricane season end in November?
Weird weather that year.
So where do you guys fly into down there? Most of the airstrips are so short, half are unpaved.
I don't know, we just landed.
You just landed. On a dirt runway, in a $60 million plane.
What are you saying, that I'm making this up?
I'm saying last time anyone went down there looking for tax shelters, they had to take a turboprop. And why would anybody want to hide their money in the Bahamas? Their privacy laws were stripped in '06.
What's your point?
Either you're confused, or you're giving spectacularly bad advice.
Forget it, I'm just trying to tell a story.
Oh, I believe that.
Who does she think she's talking to anyways?
That's a very good question.
They are just too similar. On her side, it cannot be jealousy, cause that would be ridiculous. She knows that she has Daniel on the hook, long before their engagement. And she knows better than anyone else that Daniel is everything but gay. I think at first she is just nerved by Tyler's attempts to break him up. Cause she has far more important things to deal with than with Tyler's petty little romantic delusions.
Tyler, that frat boy is becoming a huge problem. He is doing everything he can to come between Daniel and me.
Which is the reason why is some kind outsourcing this problem to Nolan. Only when she finds out that Tyler has the potential to be far more dangerous not only to her plan but to Daniel as well, she is taking matters again into her own hands. I really love their last confrontation when she pushes all the right buttons to bring him over the edge.
Oh, you bitch! Hello to my face. You know the Graysons can't stand you. Leeching off of them all summer, who can blame them? Daniel told me you've always given him the creeps, and even Ashley thinks that you're a lying hypocrite. And as for me, well, I've always seen you for exactly what you are. An impotent little misfit who's gonna spend the rest of his life on the outside looking in.
Emily.
That episode was perfect, and his last appearance in the flash-forward episode was tragic.
She's a wolf in sheep's clothing, you idiot! And you're just a helpless little lamb headed for the slaughter.
Because he is the first of many who uncovered Emily's secret and turned out dead. Would have been interesting if they had chosen him as well, or instead of Lydia or Mason to come back as a recurring character. Instead of dying, he could have become one of Emily's allies. She could have visited him in hospital and recruited him there when he was gone the first time. I believe when Tyler has the right medication, he can be as normal as anyone and manage his violent tendencies. Because in fact most of those people who have mental issues are not that bad. Only a few are real psychopaths with no remorse. For dramatic reasons, they just do not like to show us these grey shades. Anyway, she also could have come earlier to the beach and ruined Tyler's plan, so he had to adapt and think of a way to see his plan through by killing both of them. His plan would have become a romantic notion and fitting end for the show after one season. Emily sacrificing herself for Daniel or the other way around. And by trying to stop Tyler getting killed. Would have been a Romeo and Juliet-like end. Both dying for each other and Tyler telling his story that Emily tried to kill him and Daniel. And he was the only one who survived. Or he could have been persuaded by Emily to drop this. I mean, she is still not quite as good as the Graysons in manipulating people. But for Tyler, her skills would have been sufficient. So like Takeda, she could have knocked out Daniel in order to keep her secret. And while he was out, talk things through with Tyler. When Takeda showed up, he could have taken Tyler in instead of Fomander. And he could have been trained by him and sent back in season 2 to become Emily's ally. Sure, that would have made Aiden's role redundant, but would have been a nice alternative for his fast death. This pair was my favorite target from season 2. Which is not that hard because with all the mess of the initiative and all those little side plots, the routine of Emily's targets got really in the background in season 2 and 3. Which was a huge problem in season 2. Since Revenge became a totally different tone than the season before. But Patricia was intriguing and her backstory is far more interesting than the one of Emily's actual target, her husband, Judge Barnes.
Patricia Barnes. She's the wife of the judge in my father's trial. It says here she had a criminal record.
Join the club.
Apartheid protest, 1988.
Patricia was a badass.
That's James Palmer next to her. Barnes' court clerk. He and Patricia were friends.
He was the judge in the David Clarke trial.
Includes the infamous David Clarke trial.
But when it comes to that contemptible father of hers, believe me, justice was well served.
Sounds like your certainty gives you great comfort.
I haven't lost a night of sleep over the man, if that's what you're asking.
They made it clear that just like Tom Kingsley, who was the persecutor of the case, both men went through with the trial and convicting David, even though they had enough information on, let's say, reason for mistrial.
Judge Barnes has failed you, Mr. Clarke, as have I, is what Judge Barnes knew, which is that the verdict rendered in the David Clarke trial came from a tainted jury.
Like the Graysons bribing the jury and Victoria claiming David being innocent just hours before the jury came to a conclusion.
David Clarke is innocent and I can prove it. Tell the judge and have him call back the jury.
They're already in deliberations. And now you're telling me you committed perjury?
Don't believe her. She's in love with him.
Instead of doing the right thing, as Emily stated after her takedown of Kingsley. They wanted to secure their careers and out of ambition and greed did nothing to help David. Both seemed not to care if David could be truly innocent in this. Which tells us a lot about the view on the justice system in Revenge. Just like the original story of Dumas, this is always a commentary to the flaws and errors in criminal justice.
Clarence Darrow, one of history's greatest lawyers, once noted, there is no such thing as justice, in or out of court. Perhaps because justice is a flawed concept, which is why, when the system fails us, we must go out and seek our own justice.
Anyway, Patricia's past that comes up in Emily's research is far more interesting. 'Cause once again it is the woman who holds up a torch for justice and truth. Her story is kind of a mini-drama inside the episode. And I love that with all the crazy stuff going around in the background with the Initiative and the Ryan brothers, that the writers took the time to tell her story. 'Cause this makes this one episode the strongest of season 2 and one of my favorites.
Last I checked, migraines don't cause bruising.
My husband, Robert Barnes, stands to inherit a great deal more power. The greater the power, the greater the potential for abuse.
At first, when Emily notices how Barnes is abusing his wife, we see a helpless victim that needs to be saved by Emily. But the writers give us a new twist by not following the easy way. 'Cause Patricia is far stronger and ambiguous character than we and Emily thought. In her research, Emily finds out that Patricia has a strong sense for justice and was fighting for the right cause when she was younger. And unlike her husband, she never lost these moral standards.
That letter gave her the hope she needed to survive. That letter saved Amanda's life. Tonight you have the opportunity to save a whole lot more. Maybe even your own.
Anyway, unlike Victoria, Patricia, who knew about her husband's part in the David Clarke conspiracy and believed he was innocent. Okay, that letter she wrote did not have a great impact on Amanda's future life, but she tried at least. And I still like the notion that someone who was involved actually cared for this little girl. 'Cause no matter how you stand towards David Clarke, Amanda was a truly innocent and helpless casualty in this. And she had to suffer even more cause she could not understand what was happening and why. Her father and happy future was stolen from her without any explanation. So it was not that hard after bringing her down on memory lane to convince Patricia to finally do the right thing. Break free out of this marriage and leave all fear behind. By telling both truths. The one about David Clarke and her husband. What is interesting that this is truly Patricia's moment. Emily's look and shaking her head in approval and support makes us believe in this brief but intense alliance. And it is the first takedown who does not appear full of hatred or aggressive. There is a real feminine and empathic vibe here. 'Cause Patricia as the victim stands in its center. I like that very much. They did this again with Amanda's foster family when her foster brother outed their foster mom.
From 1996 to 1999, I lived at Miss Hayward's house. Those were the darkest days of my life. Under the guise of discipline, Miss Hayward ruled her house with fear and intimidation, frequently withholding food and water from us, keeping us locked in a metal coal bin for hours or even days at a time. Now this abuse went on undetected for years and continues to this very day.
That were the strongest moments on season 2 and gave both takedowns a fresh and nice touch. They did not do that, but it would have been nice to have heard about how her story ended. I guess Emily kept tabs on her. 'Cause Patricia left a mark on her. So would have been nice if she had mentioned her again. In season 3 and 4, when Margot and Victoria are reaching out to her old targets, we get briefly hints about how their lives were ruined through Emily's doings and what was the aftermath of her takedowns for Bill Harmon and Tom Kingsley, for example. Mostly I did not care, but for Michelle Banks and Patricia Barnes I would have cared. Since Emily broke into her office, I guess Michelle got her license back. And either way has a practice of her own again or works as an external reviewer again. I like that they try in every season to give us a new spin on her targets. We had that with Mason, who was in some kind of Jekyll and Mr. Hyde mode with his conscience. He could turn it off like a light switch. Judge Barnes had his wife Patricia, who took him down for Emily. And Father Paul is Emily's second target, who shows real remorse and becomes an ally. Yet he has gone much farther and changed his whole life by becoming a priest. Which is kind of funny because measuring his entanglements with the Graysons and his role in the conspiracy, they are many conspirators who have done much worse and burdened oneself with much more guilt.
Who's next to get caught with red on their face?
Paul Whitley. He was in charge of enticing investors to Grayson Global. My father saw him holding closed-door meetings with everyone who eventually betrayed him.
So Conrad used Paul's silver tongue to sway the undecided.
But he seems to be a good guy and was disgusted of himself, so I get that everyone has another limit. I must admit I love those Christian vibes he brings in. All these motives of guilt and punishment at the beginning of season 3 really brings us in the right mood for the final takedowns of Conrad and Victoria in the finale. The only thing I disliked that after season 1 they got more and more spare with the flashbacks. I guess due to budget or schedule problems. Since he was around for multiple episodes, would have been nice to see the contrast between his new improved version as Father Paul and the Paul Whitley that worked for Conrad Grayson. The targets of season 3 mostly feel so unattached to the conspiracy because we only hear about the deeds and not see them. I mean, on one point they all deceived their colleague and friend David Clarke. That must have done something to them. Paul, the Graysons and Emily cannot be the only one who are thinking back on this part of their life from time to time. Anyway, I really love how he is written. 'Cause he is not that perfect image of a Catholic priest. Like any of Emily's targets, he has flaws that Emily uses for her advantage. Okay, his affair was not that imaginative, and I was glad that they did not made up a story of child abuse. 'Cause that would have destroyed the man. And in his heartbreaking phone call with Emily we get to hear his side and his human yet again not at all surprising conflicting feelings towards Emily.
I was enraged at the injustice I felt when you framed me, for taking away everything that I thought I deserved. But I've realized that those feelings must pale in comparison to what David Clarke must have felt. To have his life ripped away from him, his career, his little girl. And to think that I helped do that to him, I played God.
'Cause she is blackmailing him and becoming her ally. Maybe because she sees not the good in him like Nolan does, or because she wants to play it safe. But I guess appealing to his sense of justice and morality may have done the trick as well. But for a priest he is real candid with her and talks about how he hated her for what she had done to him. He seems to think that becoming a priest and helping the innocent and needy people was enough recompense for his sins in the past. So I like that Emily made him learn that there cannot be a fair score. 'Cause the Graysons' crimes and his involvement cannot be undone. And his promise that he will do anything to help her. Even go to the police and tell them everything he knows made him even more relatable.
If Conrad doesn't come forward, I will.
Interesting yet not surprising either for a priest is that he truly wants to help Conrad by making him confess.
For confession, perhaps?
God already knows what I did, Paul.
Yet you still feel unsettled. True mercy requires more than a confession. It's a calling for amending your ways. Have you considered turning yourself in for your crimes? You're alone, and no one wants to die alone. Coming clean to the world will not only benefit your soul. By clearing David's name, his reputation, you would be giving your daughter her father back. And isn't that a better way to leave this world? But as a savior.
I cannot quite figure out if he truly believes that coming clean might be good for Conrad and that he has a chance of redeeming himself after everything he has done. Surely Paul does not know everything, and Emily had not the time to fill him in on all of Conrad's misdeeds. Like killing Lee Moran and ordering the murder of Fomander like you would order a pizza on the phone. And his most despicable deeds, killing Father Paul and Pascal, he has yet not made. So I assume he thinks Conrad is redeemable and worthy of God's forgiveness. Or if this is all an act to get the job done and make Conrad confess. To please Emily and keep Father Paul's conscience clean. Either way, it was great to see how Emily's and Paul's manipulation work on Conrad. Surely because he thinks he is dying soon and all those pills make him weak and more vulnerable. 'Cause after the accident that killed Father Paul we see how all of Emily's efforts fly out of the window the second Conrad gets to know he is not sick.
I've been misdiagnosed. I realize now what Father Paul meant when he said that he'd been brought back into my life through divine intervention. I mean, he was God's vessel to show me that I'm meant to live a long and meaningful existence here on Earth.
For me, this was the moment that she and we the audience realized that Conrad is beyond redemption and has to be stopped. Either by putting him in jail or killing him off. So I guess Father Paul served his purpose as a sacrifice for Emily's revengenda and a reminder how ruthless and uncaring Conrad is. I mean, Paul was one of his friends and he helped him through a rough time. How could you bring him in such danger?
Detective March says you're in the clear. Car's been demolished. Father Paul's body has been claimed by the monastery. The case is officially closed.
And tell me the truth. What really caused the crash? Oh, I took the turn too fast. I might have hit the clutch instead of the brake and made poor Father Paul the first victim of my Huntingtons.
Speaking of Conrad's victims, Pascal was maybe the only one after Emily and Victoria, of course, who had a chance to bring Conrad down. It is interesting that Emily uses old colleagues and rivals like Paul and Pascal to bring Conrad down. Shows us how powerful he still is, that Emily sees no other chance to take him out of the game. With Victoria, because it is more personal, she makes it all alone. The confrontation at the cemetery in the season 3 finale. Her stunt with Claremont, that psychiatric clinic she puts Victoria in. Though it was a nice and full circle moment using Michelle Banks to get her in. Just like Victoria put Amanda away and brainwashed her with the help of Michelle all those years ago. Yet to guard his secret, she never confronted Conrad right away. Emily always used others, and until the very end Conrad did not know what hit him. Pascal seems some kind of Conrad's twin. He is as powerful as Conrad with his media imperium. He thinks not that much of women and was married multiple times like Conrad, who divorced of Stevie to marry Victoria. Pascal even falls for the same woman, which is his fatal mistake, I still think. 'Cause the moment he rekindled his affair with Victoria, he was just as much of an enemy for Conrad as David Clarke was. I must admit, I love this cheesy love triangle between Conrad, Pascal and Victoria. Even though it is a repetition of her affair with David. And their backstory with this great love story of young Vicky and Pascal in Paris seems too constructed. Maybe we are not that much invested, cause we have again no flashbacks that convey this story. 'Cause I like this red line of the competition in business and in love. Brings up some nice conflicts and suits the atmosphere of season 3. Who went back to the soapy and extravagant character of the show. After all, this plays in the wealthy world of the Hamptons with powerful businessmen. So why not revel in the cliches of old white man who believe to be the master of the universe? While in fact the women are far more dangerous and putting all the strings in the background.
Merci.
You after discharge, soldier? Because it looks like you just shot yourself in the foot.
Not at all. Just change tactics.
Anyway, I like the hubris and backstabbing on both sides.
But we both know few sounds are sweeter than the crumbling of your fellow man. You're on those tapes too.
But I control what the world hears, which means I control you.
Threatened by both Conrad and Emily, Pascal is the perfect victim. 'Cause he is pushed against the wall and only tries to find a way out for himself and his love Victoria. Yet his rivalry and jealousy of Conrad seems to be real.
Conrad wants this. Don't give him that power. He's trying to drive us apart. Don't you see it?
This truly goes back to the time when he lost Victoria and she went back to the States to marry Conrad. Though I still wonder how both could have been still friends and partners in the conspiracy. I do not buy Pascal's explanation that he wanted to protect Victoria.
The reporter wanted to reveal the story about David. That would have badly exposed Conrad. And I knew if Conrad went down, he'd take you with him. I silenced the story because I love you. I always loved you.
He shows the same pattern Conrad does. Using Victoria as some kind of backup if plans go awry. It is no surprise that Conrad suggests Pascal would marry Victoria only to keep his secrets and being part of the conspiracy hidden. Conrad has done the same in season 2.
Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Again, just let me finish. To have and to hold and to be legally bound so that we may never be compelled to testify against each other in a court of law.
I think both men deserve Victoria and she deserves those treacherous and criminal men. 'Cause that is unconsciously, of course, what attracts Victoria to them. I do not think that Conrad was innocent before he met Victoria. Neither was Pascal. I mean, he willfully was in business with a terrorist group just out of greed and ambition. The same goes for Pascal. He wants to take out a rival and competitor in business and love just like Conrad. Pascal does not care how Victoria stands towards all this, and he is lying to her as well as Conrad and trying to manipulate her. 'Cause he is the one who brings her up against Conrad in the first place. The only selfless thing he has done for Victoria is going after Emily. But you see how fast he changes sides when he follows Emily's orders. Sure, he is still trying to protect Victoria by getting some kind of deal for her, too.
I'll give you Conrad, no problem.
We need Victoria, too.
No.
Maybe he even would have tried to get immunity for her in exchange for her statement against Conrad. He cannot know that Emily is just imposing as an agent and Victoria is one of her targets. If not the most important one. What was really old school but still cool is that the writers systematically destroyed Pascal's character before he got killed by Conrad.
But Mr. LeMarchal had other ideas.
And when I heard about that suicide, I knew Pascal had staged that whole thing. He killed your father.
Obviously to make us believe he would deserve this kind of punishment. Anyway, I had sympathy for Pascal in the end. 'Cause he is trying to save his neck here and he does everything according to plan.
Haunted by things we did in our past. Trevor Morris, David Clarke.
Oh, those are your ghosts, Pascal, not mine.
I want to move on, don't you want the same?
He is surprised as well as Emily that Conrad would go to this length to protect himself. I guess like Daniel and Victoria, the worst thing he expected that Conrad would try to put him either in jail or make him go back to France to leave him and Victoria alone. Back to the writer's trick, destroying the last sympathy the audience has for that guy. I guess here is a lot going on for American viewers. First, all the cliches and resentments that come with Pascal being French. Then his media imperium, which he can use for misinformation and campaigns against his enemies. Pascal says it himself, he controls what people think and what opinions they have. This might be short thinking since we have social media and the media world is changing that fast. But hey, hubris, like I said before. And the last nail in the coffin is him being an actual killer at least twice. First, to mirror Conrad's killing of David Clarke, Pascal was responsible for the death of Aidan's father. Second, to tie up loose ends, as Conrad would say, killing Oscar Chapman. In this I believe Pascal and Aidan were played by Conrad. 'Cause in the same fashion Conrad ordered his hits for David and Amanda Clarke, Pascal surely did not get his hands dirty himself. So both get even in this season. By letting Pascal commit murder, he makes him vulnerable to criminal investigation and gives Aidan a new motive to go after Pascal as some kind of his personal henchman. Conrad seems to believe Aidan could fill in the role Frank Stevens and Lee Moran left behind after season 1. And walk into Nate Ryan's footsteps after he worked for Victoria at the beginning of season 3.
If you're so eager, why don't you take care of Pascal yourself?
Why don't you get my hands dirty when driving? You have one day before I alert Pascal to your presence.
And by giving Victoria notice for Pascal's last deeds, he brings her up against her lover and stirs up trouble in paradise. I think in this VanCamp play revenge gets near to his beginnings. Which made the end of season 3 so strong and one of my favorite story arches. Though I would have liked to see more of Pascal and his past with the Graysons, this could have become dull very fast. So I guess heightened the stakes, and killing him off in this brutal way was not only great for shocking effects. Losing Pascal set something in motion with Victoria, and I think from that moment on, giving her time in Claremont on top, Victoria was losing it. She could not distinguish what was real and the lies she made up. In fact, everything Ben tells Emily when he visits her in prison is true for Victoria in this last season.
Please, just stop already. Do you have any idea the damage that you're causing? Or the people that you're hurting out there?
You don't believe me. You don't think I'm telling the truth.
No, it's not that I don't think you're telling the truth. It's that I don't think you know how to tell the truth. All right, I don't think there's any difference in your head between the stories that you spin and actual facts. And that is what makes you dangerous.
She starts believing her own lies. So as bad as it was losing 2 intriguing male characters in one season, it was necessary. And gave the women, namely Margot and Victoria, the chance to become the new big bad and take the lead from here. So what do you think about Emily's targets? Who was your favorite or least favorite? Do you agree with my choices? And do you think that some of them were redeemable, or did they all deserve what they had coming at them? Let me know in the comments below.